everybody take your seats. I am actually super excited to talk about my topic today. I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to ask you to please ignore the title when it comes up there because it's a giant spoiler. So let's go with that. My topic today covers a lot about sin. And I know it doesn't sound like a really super exciting topic, but I'm going to tell you a secret. I fully geeked out on the Hebrew and Greek words and their meanings and the root words, and I got down this rabbit's warren, and so I'm taking you with me. I get super excited about delving into the words and the meanings and then understanding what the Bible says. So now I know that most of you, to look at me, could be forgiven for thinking that I'm perfect. Just don't ask Jono. I know it's probably a shock to most people, but I have a significant ability to identify with Paul the Apostle when he talks about sin and doing the things that he doesn't want to do and not doing the things that he wants to do, like, for example, cleaning floors. But on a slightly more serious note, there are a lot of things that the Bible has to say about sin, correct? Yeah. All right, and essentially it says a lot about the human condition in general, and sometimes it can feel like the whole of the Bible exists to show us how wrong or how bad we are. Today I want to talk about the things that we do wrong, getting between us and God, and hopefully maybe even shift our perspectives just a little. There are three main words that the Bible uses to describe what we do wrong. Those words are sin, iniquity, and transgression. I'm going to explain all three. Let's start with sin, shall we? Sin translates in Hebrew to kata and in Greek to hamartia. The word kata is actually not even a religious word. Kata means to fail or to miss the goal, and now I know one more sports term in Hebrew than I know in English. Let me show you something that I think is super cool. In Judges 20:16 it says, among all these soldiers there were 700 select troops who were left-handed, each of whom could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. Now, it doesn't really sound all that relevant to what we're talking about, yeah? But the word used for miss here is yahati, which is the root of which is kata. Wow. So, they're not talking about sinning. See my point? Okay, let's look at this one. Desire without knowledge is not good. How much more will hasty feet miss the way? Hasty feet will kata the way. How cool is that? I was so excited about that. Okay, in the Bible, sin is a failure to fulfill a goal. With me? So my next logical question is, what was my goal? What was the thing that I've missed? Now for this, we go right back to the very beginning of the Bible and see if we can find some clues there. So Genesis 1 verse 26, right back at the beginning. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness. All right, so from this, we can see that every person ever created, ever born, is made in the image of God. Yes? Okay, get noisy. Agree with me sometimes, okay? Every person is a being created to represent the Creator or be a reflection of the Creator. Yes? Okay. If we think about ourselves and other people in this way, then we understand that every human, every reflection of God is one whom we should love. And we understand intrinsically that God is one whom we should love, yes? So from there, we understand that sin is a failure to love God and others by not treating God and others with the respect and the love that they deserve. With me? Okay, if we take the 10 Commandments, the code of conduct in today's language, if you will, handed down by God to the Israelites, and we take a look at them, we can see this. 1, you shall have no other gods before me. This is respect for God. 2, you shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. This is respect for God, making sure He alone, who is worthy, is the receiver of our worship. Okay? You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. This is respect for... You're getting it. Okay, remember the Sabbath day, keeping it holy. This is respect for God. Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land. This is respect for our parents, people who were given charge over us in our infancy, or respect for others. Yes? Okay. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, your neighbor's wife, your neighbor's servant, your neighbor's ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to the neighbor. Is respect for others. Respect for others. Genesis 39 verse 9 says this. And this is in the middle of the story of Joseph, just for context. So no one here has more authority than I do. He has held back nothing from me except you because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God. Now, this is the story of Joseph when he had been elevated to the highest position in the house of Potiphar. Potiphar's wife thought that Joseph was a bit of all right and decided it was a good idea to try a little something on. She was offering something to Joseph that wasn't his right in this situation to take. Now, Joseph identified in this moment that missing the mark in respecting Potiphar by taking what the wife was offering would have been kata, not just against Potiphar, but against God, because sinning against others who are the reflection of God is as sinning against God. Sin is a failure to be what God designed us to be as truly human, which is respect for others and respect for God, or a true reflection of God's image. Now, this is where it gets a little fun. This is where, so King Saul in the Bible, he spends a lot of time chasing David across the countryside seeking to kill him. In his mind, he is working to catch a criminal. Then there's this awesome confrontation between David and King Saul where David basically says, "Why am I being hunted? I'm insignificant, and you are the anointed leader of the people. Why would you come to kill me?" Now, that's Jerry's paraphrase. Don't go looking for those exact words. Verse 21 says, "Then Saul said, I have sinned. I am the failure." Now, sin isn't just about doing the wrong thing. It's about how we can deceive ourselves, spin things in our minds, justify things, turn our bad decisions into what we maybe perceive as good choices. We deceive ourselves into thinking that what is actually missing the mark is really hitting the mark. Pharaoh justifies his decision to turn the Israelites into slaves by deciding that this is the best way to promote the strength of the Egyptian economy and might. And so he enslaves generations of Israelites for a good reason. The end justifies the means, right? Saul justifies pursuing David because he's capturing a criminal and killing him. Even Paul the apostle, before he became Paul, was Saul, and a different Saul, and he justified the killing of those who followed Christ using the law. Paul talks about hamartia, which is the same as kata, which is the same as sin, as being in us or being a force or a power, just like when in Genesis 4:7 God talks to Cain about sin using a word image of a ravenous beast crouching at our door that wants to devour us. That's kata, that's hamartia, that's sin. Let's look at the next one, which is iniquity. Iniquity, the Hebrew word is avon. Avon is translated in a number of different English words, one of which is iniquity. Now, this is where sometimes translation isn't a straightforward process from one word in one language to another direct correlating word in another language. Sometimes words have more meanings. In that way, avon is sometimes translated as iniquity. Now, the word iniquity is tricky. It doesn't have a great deal of cultural context for us because we just don't use it. Well, I don't use it. I'm sure you could probably use it in a sentence right now. So looking at the word avon, it comes from the root word ava, which means bent or crooked. Again, this isn't actually a sin-related word. The word bent or crooked, the word ava, is used in the Bible to refer to someone's back, which is bent and causes pain. It's also used to refer to roads that are twisty and winding. When applied to behavior, it's a bit like a literary device or like a simile or a metaphor, explaining something that should be balanced or straight or direct, like our choices or our conscience, but is bent out of shape and crooked. In Isaiah, the word avon is used to say, there is so much crookedness in the leaders at a particular point in time that uprightness cannot even enter the city. There's no space. This refers to the leaders who ignored the injustices that the poor were suffering. Now, it's pretty easy to see how avon has pretty dire consequences for those hurt by the crooked choices. But it's even more interesting if you look at the biblical Hebrew for the concept of to punish, which literally translates as to visit someone's avon upon them or iniquity upon them, or to let someone sit in the consequences of their poor choices. Does that make more sense? Okay, let's leave that one there for a second. Weird place to leave it, I know. Let's look at the word transgression. Transgression in Hebrew, the noun is pesha and the verb is pasha. In Greek, the word is paraptoma. These will come in handy in a second. These words can also be translated into English as transgression, but also as rebellion or trespass, which It's an older word, but you find it in the Lord's Prayer. Trespassers, forgive our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Okay. What transgression, trespass, and rebel all have in common is that they all relate to how people violate the trust of others. Pesha describes the breaking of trust in a relationship. And I know, I personally immediately think about a friend relationship or a marriage relationship, but it's also as big as the relationship between two countries or a treaty. Though in Pesha would be breaking that agreement or that treaty. With me? Okay. In English, in 2 Kings 1 verse 1, it says, after Ahab's death, Moab rebelled against Israel. The Hebrew translation would be Moab peshad with Israel. You break trust with someone. So if you're away on a trip and someone steals something from your house, well, that's theft. But if someone happens to be your neighbor or a friend, that is pesha, because that's a person that you should have been able to trust. You can imagine that the Bible, all the way through the Old Testament, the word pesha appears a lot. The whole of the Bible journey is one long story about broken relationship, the breaking of trust in a relationship where trust should have existed. Throughout the Old Testament, God raised up prophets who were appointed and anointed to go and confront the Israelites on many, many occasions with their pesha. In the New Testament, we see Paul talk about the Garden of Eden, where Adam, or humanity, broke trust with God and took authority to discern between good and evil on their own terms and understanding. Now, he calls this, stay with me, the paraptoma of Adam, which is the breaking of trust by humanity with God and with each other. Now, God had tasked the Israelites through the 10 Commandments, as we talked about earlier, with loving God and loving people. Then, the paraptoma of Adam entered, and humanity pashad with God and each other, meaning that humanity from then on till now can constantly kata because of Avon. Let me explain that. That was hard to write and read. Humanity broke trust with God and each other, meaning that humanity from then till now constantly misses the mark because of crooked choices. Wow. That's what it means. Humanity broke trust with God and with each other, meaning humanity from then till now constantly misses the mark because of crooked choices. And this is really sad and bleak and a potentially overwhelming commentary on not just my own heart, but the state of mankind in general. But that's not where the story ends. Thank God that's not where the story ends. We know that this is not the end of the story. We know that this is essentially the halfway mark of the Bible, and what comes next is so, so exciting. Paul says in Romans 5:12 and then 5:15, therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man and death through sin, and in this way death came to all people because all sinned, for if many died by the trespass of one man, how much more did God's grace and the gift that came by the grace of the one man, Jesus Christ, overflow to the many? It's a lot of words. Let's try it a different way. If many died by the paraptoma of the one man, how much more did God's grace and the gift that came by the grace of one man, Jesus Christ, overflow to the many? If one man, Adam, broke trust with God and man, thereby creating a broken trust relationship for all between God and each other, how much more powerful is it that God's grace and the perfect gift of love and life and restoration of trust and relationship came through one man, Jesus Christ, to all? Or we can just read verse 18, so I don't have to paraphrase, and say, consequently, just as one trespass resulted in condemnation for all people, so also one righteous act resulted in justification and life for all people. Now, I'm a huge fan of where to from here. So let's look at this from the perspective of what this means for me and what I can do about it. Sound like a good idea? We have a pretty decent grasp of what sin is and what the 3 sin type words are in the Bible, and even where sin came from and why it's a problem now. But on a personal level, why do I sin? Now, Romans 15, I'm convinced, was written to confuse me. So stay with me. Paul says this, what shall we say then? Is the law sinful? Certainly not. Nevertheless, I would not have known what sin was had it not been for the law, for I would not have known what coveting really was if the law had not said, you shall not covet. But sin, seizing the opportunity afforded by the commandment, produced in me every kind of coveting, for apart from the law, sin was dead. Once I was alive apart from the law, but when the commandment came, sin sprang to life and I died. I found that the very commandment that was intended to bring life actually brought death. For sin, seizing the opportunity afforded by the commandment, deceived me and through the commandment put me to death. So then the law is holy and the commandment is holy, righteous and good. Did that which is good then become death to me? By no means. Nevertheless, in order that sin might be recognized as sin, it used what is good to bring about my death, so that through the commandment sin might become utterly sinful. Almost there. We know that the law is spiritual, but I am unspiritual, sold as a slave to sin. I do not understand what I do, for what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. And if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good. As it is no longer I myself who do it, but it is sin living in me. For I know that good itself does not dwell in me, that is, in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. Now if I do what I do not want to do, it is no longer I who do it, but it is sin living in me that does it. Right? Now here is where I run the risk of explaining myself very badly, so please God, let my words be clear and the concept that you want to communicate be good. There is a need in me that I seek to fill myself in my own strength. Whether that need is to make sure that I have sufficient money or love or food or reputation, and whether that need is one that I have or one that I perceive that I have, there is a need in me. To understand why there are some sins that I do over and over and over and over again, I have to look at what need it is that I am trying to fill with that sin. Not that the sin itself is capable of filling the need that I have or perceive that I have, but I think it is. And in my own strength, I try to fill the need. When we miss the mark over and over and over again in the same way, it's given a name just to make it nice and easy. It's called habitual sin, a habit that we've created where we can't hit the target no matter how many times we try. Those habitual sins fill a need in me. For example, pornography can become a habitual sin because I crave intimacy or because I need to escape from circumstances. Lying can become a habitual sin because I perceive the need in myself to be or present myself in a certain way, or because I'm afraid of the consequences of what might happen if I'm honest and truthful. The love of money can become a habitual sin because I need to ensure that I have enough, that I live a certain way. And to be honest, the love of money can just be that I am having trouble trusting that God can provide all my needs because I broke trust with God, and now how do I trust Him? And because I try over and over and over and over again to break this sin, the sin itself becomes the focus of my time and effort. Like Paul says, for I do not do the good that I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. What if the sin itself is the distraction? If I, for a moment, stop dwelling on don't sin, don't sin, don't sin, don't sin, don't sin. And if I, for a moment, start focusing on rebuilding the trust in the relationship that I broke with God, what if God takes care of the iniquity and God takes care of the sin and God takes care of the transgression Himself? What if just maybe, God sent Jesus to die on the cross for all of my sin? What if in my weakness He is strong? What if I am brave enough to believe that God will work all things together for good, even the things that I've done wrong? Now, this is not me condoning sin. I am not telling you to go out and sin all you like and do all the wrong things and commit murder and steal and lie and cheat, because that's not important anymore. This is me saying, what if I fix my eyes on Jesus? What if in that way He takes care of the sin? So maybe the message that I need to share with you today isn't don't sin, but instead, don't quit. Maybe the message today is don't quit on what God gave you to do. Don't quit looking to God. Don't quit making Him your focus. Don't quit chasing after what God has for you. Let me show you a little bit what I mean. Pastor Chris, could you help me, please? So I don't do sports, so I'm getting some help.
Okay, so put your left foot forward. All right. Now, when you punch, you're going to punch the opposite hand. So you're going to punch your jab that way. That's a jab. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to do a 1-2, which means you go 1, 2. Now, what I want you to do is on your right hand, I want you to load up that back foot and drive through this hand. Don't aim for the mitt, aim past the mitt. All right? Don't break my arm, you gigantic beast. All right, you ready? Here we go. 1, 2. Good. 1, 2. Good. 1, 2. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a practical example of how you lead with your weakness, and the power from your history and God combined gives you more strength. So which was the strongest hit, the first one or the second one, yeah? The second. So you lead with your weakness. You don't hide your weakness. Because when you hide something in the darkness, that's when it has power. If you bring it into the light, you bring it on into the light. So you lead with your weaknesses. This is not me punching, but you lead with your weakness and you let your past combined with God bring the power. Again, this is not me condoning sin. Sin is there. Sin entered the world through Adam and Eve in the garden, and it's never left. And it is a ravenous beast seeking to devour us, and it is crooked choices, and it is broken trust, and it is missing the mark. And we who are humans are susceptible to sin. But if we spend all of our time thinking about sin and how to avoid it, it becomes essentially us staying on that weak foot with no follow through. And that is so far from what God wanted for us and for our relationship with Him that it breaks my heart. Whatever mark you're missing, bring it to the cross, bring it to the light, bring it to Jesus, knowing that in a very wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey way, forgive the Doctor Who reference, Jesus has already forgiven the sin that you committed that you hadn't committed yet when He died on the cross for you. And then lead with your weakness, and through what we perceive as weakness, let God at work in you and in your story give Holy Spirit power to your punch. And soon enough, you will be hitting the mark. The response of a perfect God to our paraptoma, or our broken trust, was to be trustworthy on our behalf and to take on all of our broken trust upon His perfect Son, who never ever broke trust Himself. The response of a perfect God to our hamartia, our inability to be humans who fully love God and others, was to become truly human. A man who fully loved God and others. He lived for others and then died for their sin and then was raised to life so that we might have life where His sacrifice covers our failures. In Isaiah, there's this picture of a servant who carries the avon, or the iniquity of others, allowing it to crush him. This servant is then raised from the dead and restored to life, bringing life to others. The New Testament completes this story and unmasks this servant as Jesus Christ, God, who came to earth as man. Now, the response of a perfect God to our iniquity was to send Jesus to die on the cross, carrying our burdens, then to be brought back to life so He could give life to others. There's something that we do here at Believe Church. Why don't we stand this morning? Every week that we meet together, each week we make sure the opportunity is available for you to accept Jesus into your life. How it's done is simple. It's literally just saying to Jesus, I want you. I want you in my life. I'm sorry for what's come before, for all of my sins, for all of my mistakes, for every time that I've missed the mark. Let's close our eyes together and we're going to pray together. Just repeat this prayer after me. Father, I need you in my life. Thank you for sending Jesus to die on the cross for me. Thank you that you had a plan to make relationship possible. Forgive me for all the things I've done wrong. Please help me to live for you. Come take control of my life, Jesus.